There's something almost magical about running your fingers over the surface of an ancient stone tablet, feeling the grooves where someone, thousands of years ago, carefully carved symbols into its surface. These aren't just random markings, they're messages, voices from the distant past, waiting patiently to be heard. Think about it. Every inscription we uncover is like receiving a letter from another time, written by hands that shaped history itself. From shopping lists scratched into clay to royal decrees etched in stone, these ancient texts give us something textbooks never could: a direct line to the thoughts, worries, and triumphs of people who lived centuries before us. What if I told you that some of these inscriptions reveal moments so human, so relatable, they could have been written yesterday? A worker complaining about late wages on a Babylonian tablet. A love poem carved into an Egyptian tomb. Even jokes shared between friends, preserved in the ruins of Pompeii. These aren't just artifacts, they're snapshots of life, frozen in time. And the most astonishing part, many of these inscriptions were never meant for our eyes. They were everyday documents, personal notes, or bureaucratic records, never intended to survive millennia. Yet here they are, offering us an unfiltered glimpse into the past. So how do we begin to decipher these whispers from antiquity? Over the next minutes, we'll trace the footsteps of archaeologists and linguists who have dedicated their lives to unlocking these ancient messages. We'll see how a single cracked tablet can rewrite history, how symbols carved in stone reveal entire worlds we thought were lost, from the cryptic hieroglyphs of Egypt to the wedge-shaped cuneiform of Mesopotamia. Each inscription tells a story, not just of kings and empires, but of ordinary people who laughed, loved, and struggled just like we do. This isn't just a history lesson, it's a conversation across time, and you're about to become part of it. Take a moment to picture the very first time humans decided to make their words permanent. Before ink met paper, before books filled libraries, people were pressing symbols into damp clay, chiseling declarations into stone walls, hammering poetry onto metal tablets. These weren't just casual scribbles, they were deliberate acts of defiance against time itself. Imagine the weight of that decision, choosing which words deserved immortality. A king's victory, a merchant's contract, a mother's prayer, each inscription was a gamble that someone someday would care enough to read it. What makes these ancient markings so extraordinary isn't just their survival, it's what they reveal about the priorities of the past. A broken clay tablet from Mesopotamia might record the price of barley, proving that commerce hasn't changed much in 4,000 years. The Rosetta Stone, etched with the same decree in 3 scripts, became the key to unlocking Egypt's hieroglyphs because some bureaucrat insisted on multilingual paperwork. Even the boastful carvings on Assyrian palace walls show how rulers used inscriptions as ancient propaganda, twisting truth into stone to glorify their reigns. But here's what's truly fascinating. The most mundane inscriptions often tell the boldest truths. A potsherd from ancient Greece bears a lover's desperate plea. I yearn for you like the desert yearns for rain, proving some emotions transcend time. Roman soldiers scratched graffiti onto Egypt's temples, leaving behind casual doodles alongside their names, as if saying, I was here. These aren't just historical records, they're raw, unfiltered humanity. Unlike grand monuments commissioned by the powerful, everyday inscriptions give voice to people history books ignore. The homesick, the heartbroken, the ordinary folks who built empires with their bare hands. And let's not forget the sheer ingenuity behind these early writing systems. Cuneiform, with its wedge-shaped strokes pressed into clay, evolved from simple accounting marks to complex literature. The Maya carved glyphs so precise they could record astronomical events centuries in advance. Even the Indus Valley's mysterious symbols, still undeciphered, hint at a lost language waiting to be understood. Each script was a technological breakthrough, a way to trap fleeting thoughts in something solid enough to outlast kingdoms. So the next time you jot down a grocery list or text a friend, think like an ancient scribe. You're part of an unbroken chain stretching back to those first bold marks in clay. Your words may not be carved in stone, but they carry the same hope that someone someday will listen. Long before alphabets and ink, writing began with the simplest of marks, lines pressed into wet clay, symbols scratched onto bone, pictures painted on cave walls. The very first writing systems didn't spring up in one place and spread. They were born separately in distant corners of the world, as if humanity had collectively stumbled upon the same brilliant idea. Take Sumerian cuneiform, for example. What started as tiny pictographs, simple drawings of sheep or jars of grain, slowly transformed into abstract wedges and dashes, pressed into clay tablets with a reed stylus. These weren't just doodles, they were the first time humans could record a debt, a law, or even a prayer, ensuring it outlasted memory. Then there were the Egyptians, who turned writing into an art form. Hieroglyphs weren't merely practical, they were sacred, carved into temple walls with such precision that even today, their crisp lines feel alive. But here's something remarkable. Those elaborate symbols we associate with pharaohs and pyramids actually began as something far more ordinary. Early hieroglyphs were essentially receipts, notations for taxes, trade goods, and supplies. Over centuries, they evolved into a script so versatile it could capture everything from royal decrees to love poetry. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Chinese scribes were heating turtle shells and ox bones until they cracked, then reading the fissures like divine messages. These oracle bones bear the earliest known Chinese writing questions for the gods about harvests, wars, and even toothaches. What's astonishing isn't just their age, but how recognizable they feel. One inscription asks, "Will the king's toothache stop if we sacrifice 3 dogs?" It's a reminder that behind every ancient symbol, there was a person hopeful, fearful, seeking answers. The real magic of these early scripts lies in their transformation. They began as straightforward accounting tools, yet within a few generations, they could express humor, grief, and philosophy. A cuneiform tablet from ancient Mesopotamia isn't just a list of grain shipments, it's also home to the world's oldest recorded joke. Egyptian hieroglyphs didn't just glorify kings, they preserved a medical textbook detailing how to set broken bones. Writing didn't just record civilization, it accelerated it. Laws could be standardized, stories could be preserved, and knowledge could leap across generations. Think about the sheer audacity of that leap, from counting sheep to composing epic poetry, all with the same set of symbols. These early scribes were essentially building the first software, creating codes that could store and transmit human thought. And just like today's technology, writing systems didn't stand still. They adapted, borrowing from one another, simplifying and complexifying in turn. The Phoenicians took Egyptian hieroglyphs and stripped them down to an alphabet, a system so efficient it became the ancestor of nearly every script in the modern world. So the next time you type a text or jot down a note, remember, you're tapping into an invention that reshaped humanity. Those ancient scribes weren't just writing, they were solving a problem we still grapple with today: how to make fleeting thoughts permanent. And in their strokes and symbols, they left us a gift far greater than legacies of stone or gold: the power to speak across time. Power has always needed a megaphone, and in the ancient world, stone was the ultimate medium. Kings and emperors didn't just rule, they carved their legacies into mountainsides and temple walls, ensuring their words would outlast their reigns. Take the Behistun inscription, a colossal billboard chiseled 300 feet up a cliff in modern-day Iran. Darius the Great didn't just record his victories there, he turned the rock face into a warning. In 3 languages, he recounts crushing rebellions, portraying himself as the rightful ruler chosen by the gods, and threatens future dissenters with graphic consequences. It's ancient propaganda at its most theatrical, a stone-cut press release meant to intimidate as much as inform. Egyptian pharaohs took this a step further, blurring the line between ruler and deity. Walk through any temple at Luxor or Karnak, and you're bombarded with larger-than-life carvings showing pharaohs smiting enemies, offering to gods, or literally holding up the sky. These weren't just decorations, they were carefully crafted narratives. A pharaoh might commission a battle scene showing him single-handedly defeating an army, even if the real conflict was a minor skirmish. The message was clear: challenge the king, and you're challenging the cosmic order itself. What's striking is how little this differs from modern political theater. Replace stone with social media, and Darius's cliffside boasts start to look like a viral tweet thread carefully curated, designed to project strength, and quick to paint opponents as villains. The Assyrians were especially adept at this. Their palace reliefs depict kings hunting lions with effortless grace, a symbolic display of control over chaos. Meanwhile, captives grovel at their feet, a visual reminder of what happens to those who resist. These images weren't just art, they were psychological warfare, meant to awe visitors before they even reached the throne room. But here's the twist: sometimes these grandiose claims backfire in the most revealing ways. Take the Egyptian Israel stele, where Pharaoh Merneptah boasts, "Israel is laid waste, his seed is no more." It's one of the earliest mentions of Israel outside the Bible, proof that the kingdom existed. Yet the very fact that Merneptah felt the need to declare victory suggests Israel was anything but wiped out. Ancient spin doctors, it seems, faced the same credibility gaps as modern ones. The real genius of these inscriptions lies in their duality. They're both historical records and elaborate performances, blending truth with theater. A Babylonian king might inflate his building projects, claiming to restore temples that were never neglected, just to burnish his pious image. Roman emperors erased their predecessors' names from monuments, literally chiseling out rival legacies. Every chisel stroke was a calculated move in a game of perception, one that echoes today whenever a leader tweets historic achievements or airbrushes unfavorable events from official narratives. So the next time you see a polished political speech or a viral campaign ad, remember, the medium has changed, but the playbook is millennia old. From cliff faces to news feeds, those in power have always known that controlling the story is just as crucial as controlling the sword. Forget crowns and conquests for a moment. Some of history's most telling whispers come from the cracks between the grand events. Take the Babylonian merchant who pressed his fingernail into a soft clay tablet 4,000 years ago, recording a shipment of barley. That tiny indentation, now baked hard as stone, tells us more about daily life than any royal decree. These weren't just receipts, they were time capsules. One tablet lists wages paid to a worker named Ermim, along with his complaint about being shortchanged. Another details a divorce settlement, complete with custody arrangements for the children. The emotions leap across millennia: frustration, pride, the quiet triumph of a deal well struck. Then there's Pompeii, where the walls still talk. Walk its ruins today, and you'll find graffiti that could have been scrawled yesterday. A Gladiators fan brags about his favorite fighter's wins. A lovesick teenager carves, "Secundus loves Prima. If she doesn't return his affection, may she die horribly." Even the jokes feel familiar. "I'm amazed you haven't collapsed, wall, given how many people write on you." This isn't the polished history of textbooks. It's the messy, unfiltered chorus of ordinary people. What makes these humble marks so extraordinary is their accidental honesty. A doodle in the margin of a medieval manuscript, a monk's whimsical sketch of a knight fighting a snail, reveals that even scribes battled boredom. A Viking runestone in Sweden doesn't commemorate a battle, but a grieving mother's loss. Ingjibjorg loved her husband Thorstein, and in ancient Egypt, a workers' village near the Valley of the Kings preserves letters between spouses, one pleading, "Don't forget to send me oil for my skin. The sun here is cruel." The real magic lies in the mundane details. A Roman shopping list found near Hadrian's Wall includes olives, fish sauce, and poignantly, a reminder to buy a gift for the wife. A potsherd from Athens bears a child's writing exercises, the shaky letters repeating the alphabet over and over, just like modern school notebooks. Even curses take on startling intimacy. One lead tablet from Britain implores the gods to make a thief's bowels rot, proof that pettiness is hardly a modern invention. These fragments matter because they are unguarded. Kings built monuments to control their legacy, but a scribble on a wall or a note pressed into clay escapes the filter of time. They show us people who worried about money, pined for lovers, and grumbled about their bosses. A cuneiform tablet from Ur records a father's exasperation with his son's poor grades. Why can't you be like your classmate? Some struggles, it seems, are truly eternal. So while museums showcase glittering artifacts, don't overlook the cracked tablets and faded graffiti. The true pulse of history often beats in these quiet corners where a joke, a grocery list, or a homesick letter bridges the gap between then and now. When you read a Roman soldier's carved plea, "I miss the taste of good wine," you aren't studying the past, you're shaking hands with it. The heart doesn't fossilize, but love leaves its mark in the most unexpected places, like the cracked surface of a 4,000-year-old Sumerian tablet. There, in careful cuneiform, a poet mourns a lost lover. "You have poured fear over me like a cloak, you have clothed me with terror." It's a sentiment so raw, so unmistakably human, it could have been written yesterday. Across cultures and centuries, these ancient voices whisper the same truth. Love and heartbreak are timeless. In Egypt, hieroglyphs turn affection into art. A New Kingdom love poem compares a woman's beauty to the rising sun, her voice sweeter than honey, but it's the ordinary couples who truly captivate. One scribe's letter to his wife, found in a workers' village near Deir el-Medina, mixes domestic logistics with tenderness. "Send me the linen you wove, and don't forget my favorite ointment, but more than that, send word that you're well." Even royal couples joined the chorus. Pharaoh Ramesses II famously had, "My love is unique, no one can rival her," carved beside Queen Nefertari's sarcophagus, a declaration that outlasted their dynasty by millennia. Then there's Rome, where passion burned bright enough to scar stone. The poet Catullus, whose verses survive in inscriptions and manuscripts, veered from adoration to fury in the same breath. His infamous lines about Lesbia, "I hate and I love. You ask why, I don't know, but I feel it happening," could soundtrack a modern breakup playlist. Even graffiti in Pompeii captures the drama. "Health to you, Victoria, and wherever you are, may you sneeze sweetly." Reads one wall carving, blending affection with Roman superstition about sneezes revealing secret admirers. What's startling isn't just the similarity of emotions, but the intimacy of their expression. A Greek papyrus from Egypt preserves a soldier's plea to his estranged wife. "If you won't come back, at least explain why." A Babylonian tablet details a marital spat over household neglect, complete with the husband's grumble that his wife cares more for the market than our home. Even jealousy takes familiar shapes. An Etruscan mirror bears an engraved scene of a couple arguing, her hands on her hips, his face turned away in a silent treatment that needs no translation. Perhaps the most poignant are the love spells. From Greece to Mesopotamia, people pressed curses into lead tablets or whispered incantations to bind a lover's heart. One Egyptian spell insists, "Make his body feverish until he comes to my door," while a Roman-era parchment demands a woman, "Burn with passion as this wax melts." Desperation, it seems, has always been multilingual. These artifacts do more than mirror modern emotions, they challenge our assumptions about the past. A Sumerian proverb warns, "Marry for love and you'll divorce for hunger," showing that practical concerns weighed on hearts even then. Yet a tiny gold ring from Pompeii, engraved with clasped hands and the word "forever," suggests some gambled anyway. Whether carved in stone or scribbled on pottery, these messages remind us that across time, love was never simple. It was, and still is, a messy, glorious collision of hope, fear, and the stubborn belief that words could make feelings permanent. Listen closely to these ancient voices, and you'll hear something startlingly familiar: the universal ache of wanting to be remembered and the quiet triumph of succeeding. When a Byzantine teenager scratched "Sophia loves Nycters" onto a seashell 2,000 years ago, she couldn't have known we'd read it today. But that's the magic of inscriptions. They turn fleeting whispers into echoes that never fade. Beneath the poetry and receipts, the ancient world had a shadow language, words not meant to comfort but to wound. Imagine a thin sheet of lead, folded tightly and tossed into a well or buried beneath a rival's doorstep. Unfurl it and you'd find a Greek curse tablet from 2,000 years ago, its letters jagged with fury. "May Daphnes lose every race he runs, may his legs fail him as if filled with lead." These weren't idle threats, they were ritual weapons designed to harness divine power against enemies. Archaeologists have found thousands of these depictions, many targeting lovers who spurned advances, business rivals who undercut prices, even charioteers before big races. The logic was simple: if writing could record laws and prayers, why not weaponize it? The Romans perfected this dark art. A tablet from Britain invokes the goddess Sulis to deny sleep and health to a thief until he returns the stolen ring. Another, found in a grave, binds a man's tongue before court. "Let him stammer and freeze when he speaks against me." What's chilling isn't just the malice, it's the meticulousness. Some curses included twisted dolls or nails pierced through the lead, physical symbols of the harm they wished to inflict. Unlike modern slander, these words weren't meant to be read aloud. They were covert strikes, hidden where only the gods could find them. But curses weren't always personal. Assyrian kings turned entire cliffsides into monuments of terror. The Behistun inscription shows defeated rebels with ropes around their necks, their names forever branded as traitors. One boast from King Ashurbanipal reads, "I flayed the rebel leaders like sheep, draped their skins over city walls." These weren't just records of punishment, they were psychological warfare, meant to deter rebellion through sheer horror. The same pattern appears in Aztec carvings, where captives' hearts are shown ripped out, and in Egyptian temple reliefs depicting pharaohs strangling enemies with their bare hands. Yet even in this brutality, there's vulnerability. A Greek curse from Sicily begs Hecate to strike a love rival because she laughs at my pain. A Roman tablet pleads with Pluto to take Licinia away since she stole my happiness. Behind every threat lies a raw nerve fear of powerlessness, jealousy, the desperate need for control. Some curses even backfired historically. When the Persian king Xerxes had the Hellespont whipped for destroying his bridge, historians noted it didn't make the waves obey, it just made him look unhinged. What makes these dark inscriptions so compelling is their duality. They reveal societies deeply afraid of rivals, of chaos, of divine indifference. A Babylonian exorcism text lists dozens of demons to ward off, from the one who seizes children in sleep to the ghost of the man who died in a well. Protection spells often outnumbered curses, showing how fear fueled both aggression and pleas for safety. So the next time you read an ancient love poem or shopping list, remember, for every tender word preserved in clay or stone, there's likely a counterpart drenched in spite or terror. These weren't primitive impulses, they were human ones. Whether folded into lead or carved into cliffs, they prove that language has always been more than a tool. It's a mirror, reflecting our brightest hopes and darkest impulses alike. Commerce has always been humanity's great connector, and the proof is etched into stone tablets, clay seals, and bronze receipts scattered across ancient sites. Imagine walking through the bustling markets of Babylon 4,000 years ago, merchants haggling over wool prices, scribes recording loans on damp clay, traders from distant lands exchanging goods with hand gestures and broken phrases. Every transaction left a paper trail, or rather, a clay trail. A single cuneiform tablet from might list 50 jars of olive oil, the wages paid to the boatmen who transported them, and even a penalty clause if the shipment arrived late. These weren't just shopping lists, they were the backbone of civilization, proving that long before stock markets or digital banking, people had already mastered the art of the deal. At the heart of this system stood Hammurabi's Code, a towering diorite stele that functioned as both lawbook and economic manifesto. Carved in the 18th century BC, it didn't just forbid theft or murder, it set the price of beer, fixed wages for doctors, and even dictated interest rates on loans. One clause specified that a boatman who sank a cargo vessel had to replace everything lost, down to the last sack of grain. What's remarkable isn't just the precision, but the universality. These rules applied equally to local farmers and foreign merchants, creating a level playing field that stretched across Mesopotamia. Meanwhile, on the shores of the Mediterranean, Phoenician traders were pioneering globalization. Their inscriptions scratched onto pottery shards or carved into temple walls mapped out shipping routes from Tyre to Cadiz, detailing safe harbors and treacherous currents. A single potsherd found in Egypt records a shipment of cedar wood, wine, and 20 jars of honey, alongside a plea to the gods for calm seas. These weren't casual notes, they were the ancient equivalent of corporate ledgers, tracking inventory across thousands of miles. But perhaps the most ingenious system belonged to the Indus Valley civilization. Their tiny soapstone seals, stamped onto clay tags, served as both trademarks and quality guarantees. Each bore a unique glyph, a bull, an elephant, or an unreadable script alongside holes for string, allowing merchants to attach them to bales of cotton or sacks of grain. Archaeologists have found these seals as far away as Mesopotamia, proving that Indus textiles and spices were hot commodities in distant markets. What ties these fragments together is their sheer modernity. A Mesopotamian tablet from 2000 BC outlines a loan with interest payable in silver, an early form of credit. Roman merchants in Britain used wooden writing tablets to record sales, complete with a wax coating that could be smoothed and reused like a prehistoric whiteboard. Even complaints feel familiar. One Egyptian papyrus fumes about a delayed shipment of linen, warning the supplier that next time I'll take my business elsewhere. These records do more than tally goods, they reveal a world already knit together by trade, where a broken contract in Babylon could ripple all the way to the Indus. When a Hittite merchant wrote, "Trust is good, but a signed tablet is better," he wasn't just being cynical, he was distilling 4,000 years of economic wisdom into one timeless truth. The walls of ancient temples don't just whisper prayers, they scream them. In Karnak, every inch of stone is crammed with hieroglyphs praising Amun-Ra, while Mayan stairways tell of kings bleeding themselves to feed the gods. These weren't casual invocations, they were desperate negotiations with the divine, etched in materials meant to outlast mortal lives. Consider the Egyptian Book of the Dead, a sprawling collection of spells painted on papyrus and tomb walls. Far from a morbid guidebook, it was a survival manual for the afterlife, with detailed instructions on how to dodge demons, pass judgment, and even transform into a heron or lotus flower. One spell bluntly warns, "Do not let my heart be taken from me in the underworld," proof that eternity required paperwork. But the most striking aspect of these sacred texts is their practicality. A Sumerian farmer's prayer to the rain god wasn't poetic, it was transactional. "Send storms to water my fields, and I'll sacrifice my fattest lamb." Babylonian astrologers tracked Venus not out of curiosity, but because its movements were divine text messages predicting wars or famines. Even the Mayan zoomorph stones carved with gods emerging from serpent mouths doubled as agricultural calendars, their sacred rituals timed to maize planting seasons. Spirituality wasn't separate from daily life, it was the operating system. Nowhere is this fusion clearer than in curses and blessings. A Roman lead tablet begs Mercury to ruin a rival's business, while an Egyptian amulet insists Isis protects the wearer from crocodiles. Compare that to a modern athlete crossing themselves before a game, and the pattern holds. When stakes are high, humans still bargain with higher powers. The oldest known musical notation, carved on a clay tablet from Ugarit, isn't a love song, it's a hymn to the moon god's wife. Every harvest, battle, and birth had its divine audience. Yet these inscriptions also expose doubt. A graffiti-covered wall in Pompeii mocks a priest's failed prophecy, while a Greek tablet from Dodona asks Zeus, "Should we trust the oracle's advice?" Even the devout had questions. The Etruscans left behind liver-shaped bronze models, used to divine the god's will by reading animal entrails, a messy but earnest attempt to decode divine whims. What unites these artifacts is their raw humanity. A Coptic monk's scrawled prayer, "Christ, keep the scorpions away tonight," feels as immediate as a tweet. The Mayan king who carved, "I let blood so the sun would rise," wasn't just performing duty, he was shouldering the cosmic order. These texts remind us that faith, in any era, is equal parts hope, fear, and the stubborn belief that words, whether painted, carved, or whispered, can bridge the gap between earth and heaven. Imagine staring at a wall covered in strange symbols, knowing they hold stories, but the key to reading them vanished centuries ago. This was the reality for scholars facing the Rosetta Stone before 1822. Carved in 196 BC, this slab of black basalt bore the same decree in three scripts: Greek, Demotic Egyptian, and hieroglyphs. For years, hieroglyphs were thought to be purely mystical symbols until Jean-François Champollion noticed that oval loops, cartouches encircled phonetic spellings of royal names. Suddenly, a script that had been silent for 1,500 years began to speak, revealing that hieroglyphs were both pictures and sounds. The implications were staggering. Temples weren't just adorned with art, they were packed with political treaties, tax records, and even jokes. One translated inscription from Edfu Temple casually mentions a priest being fined for sleeping through his shift, proof that bureaucracy and human nature transcend time. But the Rosetta Stone wasn't a solo act. Across the Aegean, a different puzzle awaited: Linear B, a script found on clay tablets in Crete and Mycenae. For decades, experts assumed it recorded some lost language until architect Michael Ventris, an amateur linguist, made a wild guess. What if it was Greek? Working with classicist John Chadwick, he matched symbols to syllables, revealing inventories of chariots, sheep, and bronze. The lost civilization of the Mycenaeans wasn't mythical. It was meticulously organized, with palace accountants tracking every jar of olive oil. Ventris's breakthrough proved that even amateur curiosity could rewrite history. Then there's the Indus Valley script, a tantalizing mystery etched onto tiny seals and pottery. Unlike the Rosetta Stone, there's no bilingual key, just 400 cryptic symbols that refuse to yield. Some researchers think it's a language, others argue it's proto-writing, like early accounting marks. The debate itself is revealing. Sometimes the absence of answers teaches us humility. Every undeciphered script is a reminder of how much we still don't know, and how many voices remain trapped in silence. The real lesson of these decipherments isn't just linguistic, it's about collaboration. Champollion built on the work of rivals, Ventris relied on wartime code-breaking techniques. Even the Mayan glyphs, once thought indecipherable, fell to a team combining astronomy, ethnography, and sheer stubbornness. A single glyph from Palinque, now understood as Y-Ikok or Claw of Fire, unlocked the names of kings and their conquests. What seemed like decorative swirls were actually verbs, dates, and even puns. Yet for every success, there are scripts that still guard their secrets. Rongo from Easter Island, Etruscans' unrelated vocabulary, the Voynich manuscripts' botanical riddles. They taunt us with the possibility of stories we might never hear. Perhaps that's why decipherment feels so urgent. It's not just about knowledge, but about restoring dignity to cultures erased by time. When we read a Linear B tablet listing women weavers by name, we're not just translating words, we're resurrecting lives. So the next time you gloss over a street sign or skim a text message, pause. Writing is a miracle, one that defies death, distance, and oblivion. And somewhere, right now, a scholar is squinting at a faded inscription, determined to make one more voice heard. You might think ancient civilizations were all solemn rituals and epic battles, but dig a little deeper, and you'll find something wonderfully familiar: laughter etched in stone. Take that Babylonian tablet from nearly 4,000 years ago, where a teacher grumbles about his students' excuses. You skipped school, you wandered the streets, and now you can't even spell read correctly. It's a punchline that could have been ripped from a modern parent-teacher conference. Or consider the Roman graffiti in Pompeii, where someone scrawled, "I'm amazed you haven't collapsed, wall, given how many people write on you." A joke about oversharing that wouldn't feel out of place on social media today. What's striking about these ancient jokes isn't just their wit, but their universality. A papyrus from Egypt's New Kingdom tells the story of a sailor so clumsy, he trips over his own feet twice while trying to impress a woman. The punchline: she laughs so hard she drops her beer. Meanwhile, in Greece, comedies by Aristophanes mocked politicians with such biting satire, they'd make late-night hosts blush. One play, The Clouds, pokes fun at Socrates by portraying him as a charlatan who charges fees to teach students how to win arguments by twisting words. The philosopher allegedly watched from the audience, laughing along, until the play's popularity allegedly fueled his eventual trial. Even the grandest empires couldn't resist a good roast. Assyrian palace reliefs show kings hunting lions with exaggerated prowess, but court scribes sometimes slipped in cheeky details, like a soldier yawning during a victory parade. And let's not forget the Greeks, who invented entire genres of humor. The Philogyelos, a 4th century joke book, serves up groan-worthy one-liners. A student asks his teacher, "Can you hear me from across the room?" When the teacher says yes, the student replies, "Great. Then I won't need to pay for tutoring, I'll just yell my questions from home." But humor wasn't just for entertainment, it was survival. A Celtic curse tablet from Britain wishes a thief nothing but endless diarrhea, while a Sumerian proverb jokes, "Marriage is a happy prison you'll laugh, but you can't leave." These weren't just zingers, they were coping mechanisms, ways to vent frustrations in societies where speaking truth to power could be deadly. Even the Maya, known for their bloody rituals, carved bawdy jokes into pottery, like a drunk nobleman tumbling off his throne. The beauty of these ancient laughs, they humanize the past in ways grand monuments never could. When you read a Roman soldier's graffiti, "Lucilla was here, and she still owes me 5 denarii, you're not studying history. You're sharing a smirk with someone who, despite the togas and sandals, would have fit right in at a modern pub. Humor, it seems, is the ultimate time traveler proof that no matter how much the world changes, the urge to laugh at life's absurdities stays gloriously the same. Long before sterile operating rooms and precision instruments, healers were recording their remedies in clay and stone, not with scalpels but with styluses. One Assyrian tablet from 700 BC reads like a pharmacy ledger. Crush poppy seeds in beer for sleeplessness, mix tamarisk with honey for coughing. What's astonishing isn't just the specificity, but the logic behind it. Modern tests show tamarisk bark contains salicylic acid, a cousin to aspirin, while poppy derivatives still ease pain today. These weren't random guesses, they were the result of centuries of trial and error, meticulously preserved for future generations. Egyptian papyri take this further, blending science with spirituality. The Edwin Smith papyrus, dating back to 1600 BC, details 48 trauma cases with clinical precision. A fractured skull is described as a wound with the bone beneath crushed like pottery, followed by step-by-step instructions for bandaging. Yet interspersed are incantations to the god Thoth, revealing a worldview where healing required both technique and divine favor. One prescription for a headache involves applying a paste of acacia leaves while reciting, "Begone, demon of pain." A reminder that ancient medicine saw no conflict between herbs and prayers. Dentistry might be the most surprising frontier. A Sumerian text warns of tooth worms causing decay, a myth that persisted for millennia, while Egyptian mummies show evidence of early fillings made of resin and malachite. But the real showstopper is an Etruscan dental bridge from 700 BC, crafted from gold wire and animal teeth. Worn by a wealthy merchant, it proves that cosmetic dentistry isn't a modern vanity. What ties these fragments together is their willingness to experiment. The Greeks documented healers like Hippocrates advocating for clean wounds centuries before germ theory, while Chinese oracle bones mention acupuncture points still used today. Even failures were recorded. A Babylonian tablet admits the patient worsened after the poultice, showing an early embrace of medical honesty. These texts do more than list cures, they humanize their creators. A Roman votive offering shows a carved foot with the inscription, "Claudia's pain was healed here." No grand claims, just gratitude. Whether etched in stone or scribbled on papyrus, these medical whispers remind us that the drive to heal and the hope of being healed is as old as humanity itself. History loves to shout about its kings and conquerors, but listen closely to ancient inscriptions and you'll hear another story, one where women weren't just footnotes, but forces of their own. Take Hatshepsut, the Egyptian queen who didn't just rule beside a pharaoh, she became one. Her temple at Deir el-Bahari doesn't whisper her achievements, it roars them. Carved into the walls, she's depicted with the traditional false beard and kilt of a male ruler, yet the inscriptions leave no doubt. "I am the daughter of Thutmose, but I am also his heir." She didn't hide her gender, she rewrote the rules, commissioning obelisks that declared, "My majesty is divine, my monuments eternal." This wasn't just vanity, It was a political masterstroke, proving that authority could wear a woman's face. But Hatshepsut wasn't an anomaly. Dig into Sumerian clay tablets, and you'll find women like Baranum Taura, a merchant who managed vast textile trades in Lagash around 2400 BCE. Her seals stamped onto contracts show she wasn't just a silent partner. She negotiated prices, settled disputes, and even loaned silver at interest. One tablet records her sending 40 bolts of linen to a trading partner with the brisk instruction, "Payment due by the new moon." These weren't exceptions. They were part of a system where women could inherit property, run breweries, and serve as scribes. Priestesses wielded even greater power. The Enheduanna tablets from introduce us to history's first named author, a high priestess who composed hymns to the goddess Inanna. Her words weren't just prayers, they were propaganda, unifying the city-states under her father Sargon's empire. Meanwhile, in Anatolia, Hittite Queen Pujuhepa corresponded with Egyptian royalty as an equal, signing treaties with the same authority as her husband. Her letters, preserved in cuneiform, reveal a diplomat who didn't need a king to speak for her. What's revelatory isn't just that these women existed, it's how their societies acknowledged them. A Roman epitaph for a woman named Claudia boasts, "She kept the books, spun wool, and raised our children well," while a Greek curse tablet from Sicily pleads with Demeter to punish a woman who steals my customers with her better wines. Even in death, women left marks. Etruscan tombs bear inscriptions like, "Velia, wife of Arnth, built this for herself while alive. No passive memorials here." These fragments demolish the stereotype of ancient women as invisible or confined. A Babylonian divorce tablet outlines a wife's right to take a dowry and leave, while a Viking runestone in Sweden commemorates a widow who managed the farm better than any man. The past was far messier and far more interesting than we've been led to believe. The real question isn't why so few women appear in ancient texts, but why we've been so slow to listen when they do. Victory monuments tell the story conquerors want remembered, but if you want the truth about war, look where the chisel slipped. Those towering Assyrian reliefs in Nineveh don't just show battles, they're cinematic propaganda, every muscle flexed, every enemy groveling. King Ashurbanipal's lion hunt scenes portray him as a divine warrior, arrows piercing beasts mid-leap, but between the boasts there's a whisper of something darker. One siege relief shows soldiers flaying captives alive while scribes calmly record the horror, a reminder that terror was policy, carved in stone for all to see. Now shift your gaze to a crumbling Roman wall near Hadrian's frontier. Scratched into the stone, a legionary's graffiti reads, "The winters here are endless, and so is the boredom." No grand speeches, no glory, just the ache of a soldier far from home. Another carving in Assyrian barracks laments, 14 years served, and all I got was this lousy rheumatism. These aren't the voices of empires, they're the grumbles of real men who carried those empires on their backs. The contrast couldn't be starker. Pharaoh Ramesses II's temple at Abu Simbel immortalizes the Battle of Kadesh as his solo triumph, his chariot charging alone against the Hittite hordes. Yet a papyrus found in the workers' village of Deir el-Medina tells another story. The scribe Hori writes to warn his friend, "Don't believe the wall carvings." The king's victory was a stalemate bought with bribes. Even in antiquity, soldiers knew the difference between the official story and the mud, blood, and compromise of real warfare. Perhaps the most haunting dissonance comes from the Maya. Their stelae show kings standing atop bound captives, resplendent in jaguar pelts. But dig deeper, and you'll find graffiti in Tikal's hidden corridors, sketches of exhausted porters, a doodle of a warrior weeping over his dead dog. These weren't meant for history books, They were raw, unfiltered moments of fatigue and grief. What binds these fragments together is their honesty. The triumphal arch of Titus in Rome gleams with spoils from Jerusalem, but a Jewish prisoner's graffiti in a Pompeii cellar simply says, "Sodom and Gomorrah were less cruel." War's true cost isn't in the polished marble of monuments. It's in the cracks between the stones where ordinary voices stubbornly insist, "This is what it was really like." Justice wasn't always written on paper sometimes. It was carved into stone so heavy, no one could ignore it. Picture the towering black diorite pillar of Hammurabi's Code, standing in the heart of Babylon nearly 4,000 years ago. At the top, the king himself receives the laws from the sun god Shamash, a divine endorsement for rules that would govern everything from barley prices to false accusations. But what's striking isn't just the laws themselves, it's their brutal elegance. If a builder's house collapses and kills the owner, the builder shall be put to death. Simple, direct, unforgiving, yet woven into the harshness were surprising nuances. A surgeon performing a successful eye operation earned 10 shekels, but if the patient died, his hands were cut off. The message was clear: skill mattered, but accountability mattered more. Rome's 12 tables took a different approach. Bronze tablets displayed in the forum didn't just list crimes, they codified everyday frustrations. If a man sings a harmful spell against another, he shall be clubbed to death. But also, branches overhanging a neighbor's property must be trimmed to 9 feet. This wasn't just about punishment, it was about preventing disputes before they turned violent. The tables even tackled debt slavery, limiting how long a debtor could be shackled before their labor wiped the slate clean. What modern eyes might see as draconian was actually progress, replacing clan vendettas with standardized rules, no matter your social class. But these systems weren't just about control. A closer look reveals flashes of empathy. Hammurabi's code protected widows from predatory creditors, while the 12 tables mandated that roads be wide enough for 2 carts to pass, an early zoning law. Even punishments carried symbolic weight. A false witness in Babylon had their tongue torn out, a poetic justice for lies. And in Rome, if your neighbor's tree damaged your wall, you could sue for double the repair cost, incentivizing careful landscaping. The real legacy of these stone-bound laws, their stubborn refusal to vanish. Byzantine emperors cribbed from Rome's tables, while medieval scholars puzzled over Hammurabi's penalties. That eye for an eye ethos echoes in modern tort law, and the idea that rules should be public, not secret decrees, still underpins democracies today. When legislators draft new bills, they're part of a chain stretching back to those first chisel marks in rock, each stroke a bet that order could outlast chaos. Yet for all their influence, these codes had blind spots. Hammurabi's penalties varied by social class. A noble's fine was another man's death sentence. Roman law upheld paternal power so absolute, a father could legally sell his children. The contradictions are telling. Justice wasn't perfect, but the very act of writing it down was a revolution. No longer would rulers decide cases on whims. The stones held them accountable too. So the next time you see a courtroom's scales of justice, remember their weight comes from millennia of trial and error of societies arguing, carving, and sometimes chiseling their way toward fairness. Those ancient scribes didn't just record laws, they built the first fragile bridges between power and mercy, one stubborn stone at a time. Look up at the night sky today, and you're seeing the same stars that Babylonian scholars meticulously recorded on clay tablets over 3,000 years ago. Their observations weren't just poetic, they were mathematically precise. Take the Venus tablet of Amasajuka, a 7th century BCE document tracking the planet's movements with such accuracy, modern astronomers still reference it. These scribes didn't have telescopes or calculators, just patience and keen eyes, yet they noticed patterns invisible to most. Venus returns to the same position every 8 years, Mars every 47. They even calculated lunar eclipses by recognizing an 18-year cycle now called the Saros. This wasn't astrology, it was rigorous science, recorded in cuneiform as methodically as a lab notebook. Half a world away, Mayan astronomers carved their celestial insights into temple walls and bark paper codices. The Dresden Codex contains tables predicting solar eclipses down to the hour, along with the cycles of Mars and Venus. One glyph at Capon marks a lunar eclipse in 636 CE with a chilling note: the moon was eaten. But what's truly astonishing isn't the prediction itself, it's the math behind it. Mayan numerals, using just dots and bars, could express numbers into the millions, and their long count calendar measured time in units so vast, it could track celestial events millennia into the future. At Chichen Itza, the Pyramid of El Castillo aligns so perfectly with the equinox sun, shadows create a serpent slithering down the steps, a merging of architecture and astronomy that feels almost supernatural. Yet these achievements weren't isolated. In China, oracle bones from the Shang dynasty record solar eclipses as early as 1300 BCE, while Greek artifacts like the Antikythera mechanism, a bronze computer from 80 BCE, could predict planetary positions using gears. The common thread: each culture treated the sky as a text to be decoded. Babylonian tablets refer to planets as wild sheep wandering the celestial pasture, while Mayan glyphs depict stars as deities in a cosmic war. These weren't just metaphors, they were frameworks for understanding. The real brilliance lies in how these ancient scientists bridged observation and innovation. Babylonians used geometry to estimate Jupiter's speed, a technique echoing calculus. Mayan scribes corrected their calendar by adding a leap day long before Pope Gregory. Even their mistakes reveal sophistication. A misdated eclipse on a tablet shows they were testing models, not just copying tradition. So the next time you check a weather app or glance at a digital clock, remember, those algorithms trace back to stargazers who etched their genius into clay and stone. They proved you don't need high-tech tools to unlock the universe's secrets, just curiosity, persistence, and the wisdom to write it all down. Death speaks in many tongues across the ancient world, and nowhere is this clearer than in the words left with the departed. Walk through a Roman necropolis, and you'll find tombstones that read like conversations abruptly cut short. One from Pompeii simply states, "Lucius lived 22 years. His mother set this up because he deserved it. The raw grief is palpable, no poetry, no grand proverbs, just a parent's aching brevity. Yet flip to the next slab, and you might encounter something darker. Whoever disturbs this grave, may the gods deny him bread and water, and may his children perish before him." These curses weren't empty threats. They were legal contracts with the divine, enforceable in the afterlife. Romans saw tombs as inviolable property, and their inscriptions made sure everyone knew the consequences of trespassing. Egyptian sarcophagi took a different approach. Hieroglyphs covering every surface weren't just decoration, they were survival guides. A noble's coffin might list 50 types of bread, 30 jars of wine, and 10,000 linen garments for the afterlife, not as literal provisions but as magical guarantees. The Book of the Dead, painted on papyrus or tomb walls, contained spells to navigate the underworld's perils. "May my heart not betray me in the judgment hall," or "Grant that I may remember my name in the land of the dead." What seems like vanity was actually strategy. Knowing your name meant retaining your identity in eternity. Even the humblest burials included shabby figurines inscribed with work contracts. If I'm called to labor in the afterlife, this doll will answer for me. But it's the quieter memorials that linger in the heart. A Greek stele from Athens shows a little girl holding her pet doves, the inscription reading, "Thrasiclea will forever be called maiden, for the gods took her before marriage." In Scandinavia, a Viking runestone mourns. Gunnar raised this for his wife Aud, most skilled of all women with needle and thread. These aren't just epitaphs, they're snapshots of love frozen in stone. The most surprising revelations come from contrasts. Celtic graves in Britain often curse thieves but also include coins for the ferryman, a blend of intimidation and pragmatism. Meanwhile, a Pomeran tomb in Syria features a portrait of the deceased with a startlingly modern epitaph. "Here lies Tamasu, who threw the best dinner parties." Even in death, humor and humanity refuse to be silenced. What ties these traditions together is their defiance. Whether carved, painted, or chiseled, these words scream into the void, "I existed. I mattered, remember me." From the pharaoh's pyramid to the slave's unmarked grave, the message is the same. Memory is the last rebellion against oblivion. The hands that carved history into stone weren't just laborers. They were master artists wielding chisels like brushes, turning rock into canvas. Picture a Sumerian scribe pressing a reed stylus into damp clay, each wedge-shaped mark forming words with the precision of a modern printer. These weren't hurried scratches. The angle and depth of every cuneiform stroke had to be flawless, or the tablet would crack as it dried. Over in Egypt, artisans working on tomb walls mixed pigments from crushed lapis lazuli for blue, malachite for green, and ochre for gold colors so bright they still dazzle after 3,000 years. What we see today as faded remnants were once explosions of color. Hieroglyphs outlined in black, then filled with hues that made God's skin gleam gold and the Nile shimmer turquoise. The tools themselves were marvels of ingenuity. Roman masons used iron chisels with tungsten tips to slice through marble like butter, while Maya sculptors crafted obsidian blades sharper than surgical steel to etch glyphs into limestone. But the real artistry lay in adaptation. In damp climates like Britain's, Celtic craftsmen avoided clay tablets altogether, carving ogam script into the edges of standing stones where rain would highlight the grooves. Meanwhile, Chinese scribes of the Shang dynasty heated bronze until it flowed like ink, casting inscriptions into ritual vessels with characters so finely detailed, they're still legible today. What's often overlooked is the physical toll of this work. Assyrian reliefs show scribes crouched for hours, their fingers cramped around style, while Egyptian tomb paintings depict artisans grinding pigments until their hands were stained for weeks. A scribe's lament on a Babylonian tablet complains, "My eyes ache from squinting at tiny signs, my back is bent like an old bow." Yet their precision was staggering. The Rosetta Stone's Greek text fits seamlessly beside hieroglyphs because the carvers adjusted spacing millimeter by millimeter, an ancient feat of typography. The most haunting reminder of their skill, the unfinished inscriptions. In a quarry near Aswan, an abandoned obelisk lies half-carved, its hieroglyphs only outlined, revealing how artisans worked from top to bottom. At Pompeii, a frescoed election notice stops mid-sentence, the painter's brushstroke frozen by volcanic ash. These fragments are bittersweet. They show the process behind the perfection, the human hands that shaped history before time intervened. So the next time you admire an ancient inscription, look past the words to the craftsmanship. Every stroke was a choice, every color a calculation. These artisans didn't just record history, they made it beautiful, ensuring their world would be remembered not just for what it said, but for how dazzling it looked saying it. For every genuine artifact that unlocks history's secrets, there's a cunning fake waiting to rewrite them. Take the infamous mitochondrial Eve tablet, a supposed Phoenician inscription discovered in Brazil in the 19th century. Its backers claimed it proved transatlantic contact centuries before Columbus, until linguists noticed the script mixed dialects from different eras, like a sentence blending Shakespearean English with modern slang. The forgers had copied real Phoenician symbols but arranged them nonsensically, betraying their ignorance of grammar. What's chilling isn't just the deception, but what it reveals. When artifacts align too neatly with modern agendas, skepticism should flare. Even royalty weren't immune to historical airbrushing. The Babylonian king Nabonidus, obsessed with antiquity, restored temples with inscriptions crediting himself for work done centuries earlier, ancient spin doctoring. Fast forward to the Renaissance, when dealers fed Europe's hunger for classical relics by aging fake statues with acid and burying them in vineyards. One Etruscan warrior, sold to the Metropolitan Museum in the 1900s, was later exposed by its anachronistic dental work. Apparently, forgers forgot ancient Italians didn't have modern fillings. Misinterpretation can be just as dangerous as forgery. Early scholars assumed Maya glyphs were purely astronomical until breakthroughs revealed their historical narratives, complete with royal scandals and battlefield defeats. Similarly, Victorian archaeologists often read Egyptian hieroglyphs through a colonial lens, interpreting tribute scenes as evidence of primitive cultures worshipping superior pharaohs. Only later did we understand these were nuanced diplomatic exchanges between equals. The stakes are higher than academic squabbles. In the 1930s, Nazi propagandists twisted runic inscriptions to fabricate a glorified Aryan past, while modern extremists still cherry-pick medieval texts to justify hatred. Conversely, when a disputed James, brother of Jesus, ossuary emerged in Israel, its potential to reshape Christian history sparked frenzied debate, until patina analysis revealed modern tampering. The antidote: interdisciplinary rigor. Carbon dating catches forgeries by pinpointing an object's age, while linguistic algorithms flag odd phrasing. Context matters too. A genuine artifact fits its era's materials and tools, like how authentic cuneiform tablets crumble differently than modern clay. Most importantly, scholars now question their own biases, because sometimes the biggest obstacle to truth isn't deception, but our eagerness to believe. So the next time an inscription promises to rewrite history, remember, every mark on stone carries two stories: what it says and why we want to believe it. The past deserves more than a good tale. It demands our patience, humility, and willingness to let evidence speak louder than desire. Every inscription that reaches us is a winner in history's cruelest lottery. Consider the Dead Sea Scrolls, hidden in desert caves where the dry air acted as a natural preservative for 2,000 years. Meanwhile, the Library of Alexandria's priceless papyri, soaked by humidity, burned in sieges, or simply crumbled to dust, show how climate can be both archivist and executioner. Material matters just as much. A humble clay tablet from Mesopotamia, baked hard in some long-ago fire, outlasted empires, while the wax tablets of Roman schoolchildren melted away without a trace. Even gold isn't immune. Looters melted down countless inscribed artifacts, turning stories into ingots. But survival isn't just about durability, it's about obscurity. The Nag Hammadi codices, a cache of Gnostic Christian texts, survived because someone buried them in a jar, deemed too heretical to keep yet too sacred to destroy. In contrast, the Maya codices that escaped Spanish bonfires did so by being hidden in tombs or tucked into temple vaults. Sometimes, the very act of being forgotten became their salvation. The cuneiform tablets of Nineveh lay buried under Assyria's ruined palaces for centuries, shielded from reuse or recycling precisely because no one remembered they were there. Human hands have always been the wild card. The Rosetta Stone owes its existence to a pragmatic Egyptian priest who recycled an old decree into building material, inadvertently protecting it for posterity. On the flip side, the deliberate erasure of inscriptions like the Romans chiseling away the names of disgraced emperors shows how easily history can be edited in stone. Even well-meaning preservation can backfire. Medieval monks scraping parchment clean to reuse it unwittingly obliterated countless classical texts beneath their new writings. The most haunting survivors are the accidents, a receipt for 3 sheep pressed into clay by a Babylonian merchant 4,000 years ago, endured because it was filed away and abandoned. A soldier's letter home, discarded in a Roman fort's trash heap, was preserved by Britain's damp soil. These weren't meant to be immortal. They were bureaucratic debris, tossed aside without a second thought. Yet here they are, outlasting temples and thrones. So when you read an ancient inscription, remember, you're not just seeing what survived. You're seeing what escaped fire, flood, and human indifference, a whisper that refused to be silenced. Each one is a defiance of entropy, a testament to the stubbornness of words etched, inked, or carved against all odds. The relationship between ancient civilizations and animals wasn't just practical, it was spiritual, artistic, and sometimes brutally honest. Take the Assyrians, whose palace walls in Nineveh are lined with scenes of kings hunting lions. At first glance, these carvings seem like simple displays of royal prowess, but look closer. Each lion is rendered with startling realism, muscles taut, faces contorted in snarls or agony. This wasn't just sport, it was propaganda. By depicting themselves as conquerors of nature's most fearsome beasts, Assyrian rulers symbolized their dominance over chaos itself. Yet even in this violence, there's a paradox. The same artists who carved dying lions also sculpted tender scenes of royal gardens teeming with gazelles and birds, suggesting a society that both revered and sought to subdue the wild. Now contrast that with Egypt, where cats weren't just pets but divine avatars. The goddess Bastet, depicted as a lioness or a domestic cat, embodied protection and fertility. When a beloved family cat died, owners shaved their eyebrows in mourning and buried the animal with mummified mice for the afterlife. Archaeologists have found entire cemeteries for cats, some wrapped in linen finer than what humans wore. But this reverence wasn't universal. Egyptian hippos, for example, were feared as symbols of chaos hunted in life, their ivory tusks carved into amulets to ward off the very chaos they represented. The Maya took animal symbolism even further. Their glyphs and murals showed jaguars as bridges between worlds. Kings wore jaguar pelts to channel the beast's strength, while shamans believed they could transform into jaguars to traverse the spirit realm. A single vase from the classic period depicts a mythic deer whose hooves sprout flowers, blending prey and fertility into a single sacred metaphor. Yet for all this reverence, ancient economies relied on animals in brutally practical ways. Roman butcher shops in Pompeii left behind mosaics detailing cuts of meat, while Mesopotamian tablets record the precise fat-to-lean ratios of sacrificial sheep. The Minoans of Crete painted dolphins leaping joyfully on palace walls, but also harvested their oil for lamps. This duality, animals as both kin and commodity, mirrors our modern tensions over conservation and consumption. Perhaps the most poignant evidence comes from the margins. A Greek child's toy horse, its wooden wheels still intact. A Viking burial where a warrior's dog was laid at his feet, its collar inscribed, "Never leave me." These quiet moments remind us that across millennia, humans have looked into the eyes of animals and seen something familiar. companionship, utility, wonder, and a mirror to our own place in the natural world. The sea doesn't just separate lands, it stitches them together with stories, and nowhere is this clearer than in the inscriptions left by ancient travelers. Take that Phoenician trader who docked his ship on a Greek shore 3,000 years ago, scratching his alphabet into a clay tablet. To him, it was just a way to tally jars of olive oil, but to history, it was a revolution. The Phoenicians didn't just trade purple dye and cedar wood, they traded letters, spreading their 22-character script from Tyre to Carthage to Cadiz. Sailors and merchants adapted it, dropping sounds that didn't fit their tongues, adding vowels the Phoenicians never used. By the time it reached the Greeks, it had morphed into something new, the ancestor of every Latin, Cyrillic, and even runic alphabet in Europe. Globalization didn't start with container ships. It began with merchants haggling over amphorae and walking away with more than cargo. But migration wasn't just about letters, it was about lives. In the bustling port of Ostia, Rome's gateway to the world, tombstones tell tales of Syrian merchants, Egyptian priests, and Gallic sailors buried far from home. One epitaph mourns a woman named Regina, a Briton who married a Syrian freedman. She lived 30 years, a Celt by birth but a Roman at heart. These stones are more than memorials, they're passports to a world where identities blurred as easily as languages. Over in Anatolia, a bilingual inscription in Lycian and Greek reveals how a local ruler named Urbina adopted Greek titles to impress his neighbors while still honoring Lycian gods. Assimilation wasn't surrender, it was strategy. The real surprises come from the margins. A scrap of pottery found in Spain bears a name scrawled in Greek and Iberian characters, likely a scribe practicing both scripts. In India, the Edicts of Ashoka were carved in Greek and Aramaic near Kandahar, proving the Mauryan emperor knew his proclamations needed to speak to diverse audiences. Even the Vikings left rune stones in Sweden, boasting of raids in the east, their words peppered with Slavic loanwords picked up along the trade routes. What ties these fragments together is their quiet defiance of borders. A single receipt from Palmyra lists goods in Aramaic, Greek, and Latin, the ancient equivalent of a multilingual shipping label. The Rosetta Stone itself, with its trio of scripts, wasn't just a key to decipherment. It was a snapshot of a multicultural bureaucracy where Egyptian priests, Greek rulers, and Roman administrators all needed to be heard. So the next time someone calls globalization a modern invention, point to the clay tablets and stone slabs that say otherwise. Languages have always migrated, cultures have always mixed, and the most powerful inscription isn't carved in stone. It's etched into the DNA of every word we speak today. The past wasn't a mosaic of isolated tribes. It was a simmering stew of ideas, and every trader, mercenary, or wandering scribe added another spice to the pot. Behind every perfectly carved hieroglyph and every meticulously pressed cuneiform wedge, there was a human hand, and often a very human grumble. These ancient scribes were the original knowledge workers, spending years mastering hundreds of symbols only to spend their days recording tax receipts or transcribing royal decrees. But if you look closely at their work, you'll find something textbooks rarely mention: mistakes. A Babylonian tablet might show a hastily crossed out line where the scribe confused barley and dates, or an Egyptian papyrus with a doodle in the margin where the writer's attention wandered. These flaws are like fingerprints pressed into clay, proof that even the most formal records were made by people with aching wrists and wandering minds. Take the scribe who worked on the Egyptian Satire of the Trades, a text that mockingly describes various professions. After listing the miseries of fishermen and laundry workers, he couldn't resist adding his own complaint. the scribe's fingers are cramped from dawn till dusk. Over in Mesopotamia, a school tablet from 2000 BC captures a student's punishment, forced to write the same line dozens of times after botching a character. His shaky handwriting grows progressively more resigned, as if each stroke screamed, "Why did I sign up for this?" But scribes weren't just passive recorders, they were subtle rebels. One Assyrian tablet ends with a cheeky postscript: "Whoever finds this and doesn't send it back, may the gods give him diarrhea." Another, from Deir el-Medina, shows a scribe sketching his supervisor with donkey ears mid-document. Even in rigidly hierarchical societies, these literate elites found ways to poke fun at authority. What's most revealing, though, are their private notes. A letter between Egyptian scribes complains about a colleague who drinks beer all day and still gets paid, while a Sumerian tablet whines about a lack of decent lamp oil for late-night work sessions. These aren't the voices of faceless functionaries, they're the gripes of office workers trapped in a system older than empires, yet their legacy is undeniable. When a Hittite scribe signed his name at the end of a treaty or a Maya calligrapher mixed cochineal dye for royal manuscripts, they weren't just copying words. They were deciding which stories survived. Every stroke of their styli and brushes was a vote for what mattered, whether it was a king's victory or the price of a loaf of bread. So the next time you see an ancient inscription, don't just read the words. Look for the smudges, the corrections, the faint lines where a tired hand hesitated. Behind every official record, there's a person who probably just wanted to go home. Children's laughter may not echo through ancient inscriptions as loudly as kings' decrees or merchants' receipts, but when their voices do break through, they're impossible to ignore. Take that small clay tablet from Mesopotamia, scrawled with a student's shaky cuneiform, a school exercise where the child copied the same phrase over and over, his lines growing increasingly uneven as his hand tired. Nearby, the teacher's corrections are still visible, pressing the correct wedges deeper into the clay. This wasn't just homework, it was a moment frozen in time, a 4,000-year-old snapshot of a child grappling with the same frustrations any modern student might feel. Then there's the Greek terracotta doll, its articulated limbs long since broken, but the words painted on its chest still clear. "Play with me." 2 words, and suddenly, the distance between ancient and modern childhood collapses. Archaeologists have found spinning tops in Roman sewers, wooden swords in Viking graves, and even a tiny bronze rattle from Egypt shaped like a hedgehog, each one a testament to the universal urge to play. But toys weren't just for fun. A set of ivory alphabet blocks from Pompeii shows how play doubled as education, while Egyptian board games like Senet taught strategy under the guise of entertainment. What's heartbreaking is how rarely these glimpses survive. Children's lives were often too ordinary to carve into stone or bake into clay, but when they do appear, the details are piercing. A Sumerian letter from a father to his son complains, "Why haven't you written? Your mother and I worry." A Roman epitaph for a 6-year-old girl reads, "She was learning to read and write, and oh, how quickly she danced." Even the graffiti in Pompeii includes a child's rough sketch of a gladiator, complete with oversized helmet and tiny sword, proof that kids have always doodled their heroes. The most poignant traces come from places we least expect. A tiny footprint pressed into a wet brick at a Babylonian construction site. A Celtic baby's rattle filled with pebbles to mimic rain. A Coptic child's tunic, its hem embroidered with a protective prayer against scorpions. These weren't meant as messages for the future, they were everyday acts of love and concern. Perhaps that's why these fragments resonate so deeply. They remind us that behind the grand narratives of empires and conquests, there were smaller, quieter stories of parents fretting over homework, children begging for one more game, and toys lovingly made only to be lost or broken. In a world where most inscriptions shout about power and permanence, these whispers of childhood are the ones that truly endure. Nature never asked permission before rewriting human history, and the ancients left us front-row accounts etched in stone. Imagine a Babylonian scribe pressing his stylus into clay 3,800 years ago, recording not royal triumphs, but a horror beyond any army's reach. The rains did not come. The fields birthed only dust, mothers traded sons for grain. This wasn't poetry, it was a stark climate report, one of countless inscriptions that preserve humanity's fragile dance with disaster. Across the Mediterranean, the volcanic eruption that buried Thera in 1600 BC didn't just vanish. It echoed in Egyptian hieroglyphs describing the sky roaring like a wounded bull, and Minoan frescoes showing tsunamis swallowing fleets whole. These weren't myths, they were eyewitness testimony, scrawled by hands that trembled as much from fear as from the quaking earth. The Romans turned disaster response into propaganda. After the Great Fire of 64 CE reduced Rome to smoldering rubble, Nero didn't just rebuild. He commissioned inscriptions boasting of wider streets and fireproof brick, turning tragedy into a sales pitch for imperial competence. But the most revealing records come from Pompeii's lesser-known neighbor, Herculaneum. There, a wooden tablet preserves a desperate petition to the emperor, "Our city still shakes." The gods are angry, send engineers, not promises. It's a reminder that for all their marble monuments, even empires knelt before nature's whims. What's startling is how precisely these ancient accounts align with modern science. Tree rings from Anatolia confirm droughts lamented in Hittite tablets, while sediment cores match Maya glyphs describing the year the lakes turned to mud. A Chinese oracle bone from 1200 BC queries the gods about cracking earth and falling houses, likely referencing the earliest recorded earthquake. These weren't primitive superstitions, they were meticulous observations. Babylonian astronomers even noted how Venus appeared dimmer after volcanic eruptions, connecting atmospheric ash with celestial changes. Yet amid the chaos, these inscriptions reveal something profoundly human: resilience. A Sumerian tablet lists not just flood deaths, but the rebuilding loans issued to farmers. In Guatemala, a Maya stele recounts a hurricane that tore the thatch from the palaces, followed by the proud note that the king raised the beams higher than before. Disaster didn't just destroy, it became a catalyst for innovation. Roman concrete mixed with volcanic ash grew stronger in seawater, allowing harbors to withstand storms that would have shattered earlier docks. Perhaps the most humbling lesson lies in what these records omit. No ancient inscription blames disasters on abstract climate change, but many acknowledge human folly. A cuneiform tablet from Ur warns that deforestation upstream led to rivers, choking on the bones of the earth. Egyptian priests carved warnings about overfarming the Nile's banks, leaving the soil as thin as a beggar's robe. These voices from the past aren't just historical curiosities, they're mirrors reflecting our own precarious balance with the planet. When a Byzantine scribe wrote, "The sea rises faster than our prayers," he could have been speaking to any coastal city today. So the next time you read a weather report or see flood warnings scroll across your screen, remember, you're part of an unbroken chain stretching back to those first terrified scribes who pressed stylus to clay, determined to make survival as permanent as the disasters they endured. Their words were more than records, they were acts of defiance, proof that even when the earth shakes and the skies burn, humanity's greatest instinct isn't just to endure, but to bear witness. The Rosetta Stone sits proudly in the British Museum. its glass case reflecting the gaze of millions but just footsteps away. Egyptian schoolchildren press their noses to the glass, separated from a monument that literally holds the key to their ancestors' voices. This isn't just an academic debate, it's a visceral disconnect. How do we balance preservation with ownership when so many of the world's inscriptions reside thousands of miles from where they were carved? The Elgin marbles, the Benin bronzes, the Gilgamesh dream tablet, each artifact tells two stories, one of ancient civilizations and another of modern power struggles. Proponents of keeping artifacts abroad often cite preservation. The British Museum argues humidity-controlled galleries protect objects better than unstable home environments. When ISIS destroyed Nimrod's Assyrian reliefs, some whispered that at least the Louvre's collection survived, but this logic carries uncomfortable echoes. 19th century colonial collectors often justified removals by claiming locals didn't appreciate their own heritage, a paternalism that still lingers. Worse, climate-controlled storage isn't an either-or. When Italy returned the 400-year-old Eufronio's crater to Rome, they built a state-of-the-art facility matching the Met standards, proving care and custody aren't mutually exclusive. Yet repatriation isn't simple. Some artifacts lack clear modern claimants. The Cyrus cylinder, hailed as an early human rights charter, was found in Babylon, modern Iraq, but written in Old Persian by conquerors from Iran. Who owns it? Other objects risk becoming political pawns. Greece's demand for the Parthenon marbles intensified during its financial crisis, with some nationalists framing their return as economic reparations. Meanwhile, Turkey's aggressive pursuit of Hittite artifacts has critics accusing Erdogan of using archaeology to stoke nationalist fervor. The most compelling cases involve living cultures. Maori tribal elders wept when New Zealand's Te Papa Museum repatriated sacred carved panels from London after a century abroad. These weren't just artworks, they were vessels for ancestral spirits, their absence a spiritual wound. Similarly, Native American tribes have used the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act to reclaim not just artifacts, but human remains, arguing no academic interest outweighs the ethics of displaying great-great-grandparents as museum specimens. Technology offers middle paths. The Benin Dialogue Group digitally scans looted bronzes, allowing Nigerian artists to create perfect replicas while originals remain in Europe. Virtual reality reconstructions let visitors hold fragile cuneiform tablets without risking damage, but for many, facsimiles feel like consolation prizes. As one Ghanaian scholar asked after British museums offered 3D prints of looted Asante gold, would the crown jewels ever be replaced with plastic copies? Perhaps the real question isn't where artifacts belong, but who gets to decide. When the Vatican returned 3 Parthenon fragments to Greece in 2023, it framed the act as a donation, sidestepping legal ownership debates. Meanwhile, some museums are shifting from ownership to stewardship, like the Netherlands Tropen Museum, which now labels colonial-era Indonesian artifacts as on long-term loan. These semantic shifts matter. They acknowledge that while glass cases preserve stone, only justice can heal history's fractures. The inscriptions themselves hold the final irony. Many were originally plundered. Assyrian kings dragged conquered cities' monuments to Nineveh. Romans shipped Egyptian obelisks to Rome as trophies. Today's debates are just the latest chapter in an ancient story of conquest and reclamation. The difference, this time, the voices of those once silenced are carved not in clay, but in lawsuits, protests, and the quiet determination to rewrite who controls the narrative of the past. The chisel and stylus once defined the limits of inscription. But today, technology cracks open possibilities those ancient scribes couldn't have dreamed of. Picture a crumbling Assyrian tablet, its surface so worn that whole passages seem lost forever. Enter multispectral imaging, a technique that bombards the clay with different wavelengths of light, revealing ghostly traces of ink invisible to the naked eye. Suddenly, a receipt for sheep becomes a ledger of climate data, recording droughts that reshaped empires. Over in Oxford, researchers use AI to predict missing cuneiform characters with startling accuracy, like autocomplete for 4,000-year-old shopping lists. One algorithm even spotted a previously unknown dialect hidden in routine temple accounts, proof that machines can read between the wedges in ways human eyes never could. But the real revolution lies in Reconstruction. For centuries, the Epic of Gilgamesh existed only in fragments, scattered across museums from London to Baghdad. Now, digital scans align broken edges with pixel-perfect precision, stitching together lines shattered by time or looters. A joint Turkish-German project used 3D modeling to virtually unfold a Hittite lead scroll too brittle to physically open, revealing curses against rival kings without ever touching the metal. Even the Vatican's secret archives are yielding secrets. Ultraviolet cameras exposed erased palimpsests where early Christian hymns were scraped away to reuse parchment, only for the original lyrics to resurface as glowing spectral text. The most ambitious efforts transcend individual artifacts. The Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative connects over 600,000 tablets from 30 collections worldwide, allowing a scholar in Chicago to cross-reference a Babylonian contract with its duplicate in Istanbul at the click of a button. Meanwhile, the Lazarus Project resurrects texts lost to fire or paint, like the Herculaneum scrolls carbonized by Vesuvius. By combining CT scans with machine learning, they've decoded passages on Epicurean philosophy from what looked like lumps of charcoal words thought silenced forever, now whispering across millennia. Yet for all their power, these tools can't replace human curiosity. When AI suggested a Maya glyph might represent trade route, linguists laughed until they found the same symbol carved at way stations along newly discovered jungle paths. Technology opens doors, but it's still archaeologists who walk through them, piecing together stories where algorithms see only patterns. A single scan might reveal a scribe's fingerprint in the clay or the shaky handwriting of a student's first attempt. Details no software can fully interpret without the context of human experience. What's truly exciting isn't just recovering lost words, but redefining what reading means. Augmented reality apps now let you hold a virtual Rosetta Stone in your living room, rotating it to catch sunlight on hieroglyphs exactly as Champollion did. In Jordan, tourists used tablets to see Petra's faded Nabatean inscriptions restored in real time, their original colors blazing anew. This isn't just preservation, it's resurrection, turning every cracked stone back into the living document it once was. The irony, these cutting-edge tools are revealing how much we still don't know. A single algorithm analyzing Indus Valley symbols recently proposed they might represent a lost sign language, not a written script. Another study found that half of all known linear tablets contain mathematical errors, suggesting either widespread scribble carelessness or a numbering system we've fundamentally misunderstood. For every mystery solved, technology uncovers three more, ensuring the conversation between past and present never grows stale. So the next time you see a drone mapping an archaeological site or a researcher squinting at a screen full of spectral images, remember, they're not just using technology. They're continuing a tradition as old as writing itself, the relentless, messy, glorious pursuit of making silent stones speak again. Ancient inscriptions don't just belong to the past, they speak directly to the present in ways that can startle us with their relevance. Take the Babylonian Almanac of Errors, a clay tablet listing common bureaucratic mistakes from 3,000 years ago. One entry warns against scribes who record barley deliveries in the wrong month, a mistake that could throw off an entire city's food supply. Fast forward to modern times, and we're still grappling with spreadsheet errors that crash stock markets or misdirected shipments that leave shelves empty. The tools have changed, but the human fallibility behind them hasn't. These ancient records remind us that progress isn't just about advancing technology. It's about recognizing the stubborn patterns of human nature that persist across millennia. Consider how ancient empires managed information overload. The Assyrians, who ruled vast territories from Nineveh, developed one of history's first filing systems, clay tablets organized by subject, date, and even cross-referenced with summary labels. Sound familiar? It's the precursor to modern databases and metadata. Yet their archives also reveal cracks in the system. A frantic memo about missing census tablets, a scribe complaining that the storage rooms are overflowing. These weren't just administrative headaches, they were early warnings about the limits of centralized control. Today, as we drown in digital data and debate the ethics of surveillance states, those Assyrian storage rooms feel uncomfortably prophetic. The emotional echoes are even more striking. A Roman graffiti in Pompeii laments, "The landlord raised my rent again," a complaint that could trend on social media today. Egyptian love poems from the New Kingdom ache with the same raw vulnerability as modern breakup songs, and when a Sumerian father writes to his neglectful son, "Why do you never visit?" Your mother cries at night. The universality of family drama transcends time. These voices dissolve the myth that ancient people were fundamentally different from us. Their fears, joys, and petty grievances are ours, just wrapped in different cultural packaging. Perhaps most crucially, these inscriptions expose the cyclical nature of power. The Maya stelae that glorify kings also subtly document their failures, droughts ignored, wars lost, alliances broken. The Behistun inscription, Darius the Great's massive cliffside resume, was meant to intimidate rivals, but today it reads like a cautionary tale about the fragility of authoritarian narratives. Even the Rosetta Stone, often celebrated as a linguistic key, is ultimately a tax decree dressed up in priestly jargon, proof that bureaucratic spin is as old as writing itself. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and these ancient texts give us the rhythm. So why does this matter now? Because in an age of fleeting digital content, where tweets vanish and servers crash, there's wisdom in the endurance of stone and clay. The Mesopotamians knew their contracts had to survive floods and fires. The Egyptians carved their deepest beliefs into granite, betting against oblivion. In a world where misinformation spreads faster than fact, these ancient voices challenge us. What are we writing today that will still speak truth in 3,000 years? Not just the polished monuments, but the receipts, the doodles, the scribbled notes that reveal who we really were. The past isn't a foreign country, it's a conversation we're still having, if we're willing to listen. From the towering obelisks of pharaohs to the faint pencil marks of a Roman child practicing letters on a wax tablet, these ancient inscriptions share a single, powerful truth: humanity's hopes, fears, and dreams haven't changed as much as we might think. A Babylonian merchant's complaint about late payments could easily be an email from a frustrated freelancer today. A love poem etched into an Egyptian tomb resonates with the same raw emotion as a text message sent last night. These voices from the past don't just belong to history books, they're fragments of lives startlingly like our own. proving that while empires rise and fall, the human experience remains beautifully, stubbornly consistent. But here's the real magic. These inscriptions force us to confront our own legacy. Every tweet, every grocery list scribbled on a sticky note, every heartfelt letter saved in a drawer, they're all potential artifacts. Future historians might sift through our digital footprints with the same awe we reserve for cuneiform tablets, piecing together our world from receipts, memes, and hastily typed emails. Will they marvel at our poetry or puzzle over our slang? Will they see our social media posts as modern-day graffiti, capturing the unfiltered pulse of ordinary lives? The irony is delicious. We're now the ancient civilization, our words floating in the cloud instead of pressed into clay, yet still screaming into the void, "I was here." Preserving these whispers isn't just academic, it's an act of defiance against time itself. When linguists painstakingly reconstruct a shattered Mycenaean tablet or volunteers scan crumbling medieval manuscripts, they're not just saving words, they're safeguarding humanity's collective memory. Each recovered syllable is a victory over oblivion, a refusal to let the past dissolve into silence. And in a world where digital data can vanish with a power outage or a corrupted hard drive, there's something humbling about the endurance of a well-fired clay tablet or a sun-bleached stone carving. So as we close this journey through ancient inscriptions, I'll leave you with a challenge. Look around at the words you're leaving behind. What will they say about you 1,000 years from now? Drop your thoughts in the comments. After all, your words might just be the next chapter in this endless conversation across time. And if you've enjoyed unraveling these hidden histories with us, hit that subscribe button to keep exploring the stories etched not just in stone, but in the very fabric of who